What is up, everybody? Welcome back to, I always say it's a special edition, right, of the line and the physique, because every episode's special with Todd. But we don't get to do this enough. We put up a poll on social media the other day. Thank you to everybody who responded. We just got an overflow of people saying that they missed the episodes and they want to see the show come back. So thank you to everybody who got us back on here, right? What's up, man?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Ryan? So let's
So,
cut to the chase and start talking about your shows. How'd you do it with your show? The ins, the outs, how it was, takeaways, the whole
man,
nine yards. We all want to hear it.
this was the first show that I was just so mellow going into, right? Like every day that passed was like, dude, I loved every meal. I loved, every cardio session. I loved every training session. So for me, it was like there was such minimal stress, but at the same time, still very high expectations, right? I was like, my check-ins were looking good. I was trusting the process, and I was like, man, we're killing it. Me and my coach Anthony Scalza, who's a IFBB men's physique pro, who was prepping me for classic. We did a Joe, is it Joe Franco? That's the promoter's name.
Yep, Joe Franco.
Yeah, so Joe Franco puts on amazing shows every time with the OCB.
Mhm.
So I knew that the stage would be good, the lighting would be good, the photos afterwards. This was also the first show where I did kind of like the behind the scenes stuff on my own. Went to the hotel by myself, the check-ins, all that stuff. Nobody was really looking at my tan. Nobody was watching my meal, right? Like usually when I compete and I do these shows, I always have somebody backstage with me and somebody kind of walking me through. Hey, Rye, it's this time. Let's sit down and eat. It was more or less like, this is around the time I eat, so I'll eat. This is around the time. I checked in with my coach. I checked in with Scalza. He was, on top of everything for me, which was great, and he was super responsive. But at the same time, it was like he's not kind of there. He's not the one holding the rice cake, right? Measuring out my honey and stuff like that. So something that I've always discussed with you and something that I struggled with was accountability and, being able to, not that I didn't have the discipline, but it was more or less like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it 110%. And this person in the background who's going to help coach me there is, hey, if something goes right, I'm going to be the first to say, like, this person learned my body and got me to where I needed to be. If something goes wrong, I know I can say, hey, I checked every box. We got to do something different next time around.
Right.
It might sound a little selfish, right? But I know that if I check every box that is handed to me, there's no excuses on my end, right? That's the best I could have. That's the best I could have brought. So did everything. The stayed overnight at the hotel for myself. Got walked around a little bit, got some steps in. I can't just sit in a room with my feet up and do nothing, right? So fast forward to the show, man. I was standing backstage and just oozing confidence, right? Like I'm sitting there. I had my headphones in, my legs were up. Some people were asking questions. There were some young kids there. Obviously, every show has teens and has novice and debut and stuff like that. And I have people like asking me questions about well, what to expect here, what to expect there. When should I get glazed up? When should I pump up? I was just like, just wait till you're in line, right? Like, not the answer probably these kids wanted to hear, right? They want to hear, like, dude, start pumping up now, get your salt and start, loading up on the rice case. You got 45 minutes until we line. And I'm like, dude, you're okay. Like, just go say hi to your family, go, post something on social media. You're good. You're good. Like, just chill. And, you're standing back there and you're standing online for Classic Open. And I'm looking up and down the line and there's 8 guys. I'm thinking, like, I have a text message on my phone. I texted my brother, literally standing backstage. I brought all my stuff, up and around and behind the curtain. And my brother had texted me and he was like, when are we going on? I said, I'm lined up backstage. And I just remember going front double bicep, lights out. And I know that sounds like such a cocky thing, but I was just like, man, like just the confidence was there, right? Like I'm just standing there and everyone's like, oh, like, I remember these 2 guys were standing in line, like critiquing each other's posing. And man, I sound like such a dick, but I'm like, if you can't hit that side chest 30 seconds before you walk out on stage, okay, I got you beat, right? Like it was very selfish of me, but I was like, hey, I'm ready, right? Like to digress a little bit. I checked every box, right? I'm gonna walk out there and I have confidence. So I texted my brother and I was like, front double bicep, lights out. And if you check out my Instagram, that's the first picture that I have pinned up on my Instagram right now. I sat into that front double. First of all, I sat into my front relaxed,
Mm-hmm.
and they start, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn. Everybody starts moving. I'm sitting there in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we hit our front double. Just confidence, right? Like I just felt so good. Quarter turn, side chest, back double, blah, blah, blah. Get to the front again, moving around. I don't go anywhere. I'm still sitting, right in the middle of the stage. We go through it a third time. Well, we go through technically our poses a second time.
Mm-hmm.
And then they move me to the side. And the guy they moved me next to, super, super great dude, had a great opportunity to talk to him backstage. And I'm thinking, oh shit, this is 1 and 2. Like they're comparing 1, 2. Guy next to me, I thought would have been 3, and then so on down the line. And so then they kind of move again. And then the last time they put us through, they moved me back to the middle. And I just I clapped. I was like, let's go. Like I just got, the crowd reacts, right? Like, cause not a lot of guys at the OCB or the girls really own the stage, right? For a lot of OCB, and we've touched on this before, there's a lot of beginners, right? It's first time on the stage, this, that, and the other. So I don't really think they had I'm a ham, dude. Like I was up there, I was like, let's go. Like I was clapping my hands. I was, being that guy. They moved me in the middle. I was like, let's go. And I had people, cheer and clap and stuff. And at the end of the day, I ended up taking 4th in the open, which I don't know if I faded, while we were posing, if somebody just got tighter. I definitely think 1 and 2 had me beat. The guy who ended up winning novice overall and then classic open, I'm just going to ignore the novice stuff, right? Open is where it really matters. Novice I plays very well as well. So open, the guy who won the open ended up going on and placing 4th in Arizona. I don't know the name of the show, but it was his pro debut. So it was great, right? Like he went on and it wasn't a fluke, right? He deserved to be up there.
Right.
Yeah, numbers 1 and 2, I definitely thought like, okay, that's fair. The kid who took 3rd, he was 19 years old. It was his first time on stage, and he was just a skinny kid, right? Like I'm just gonna put it out there. I know that's not going to be a friendly way to put it. He told me he weighed about 125 pounds, 130
Wow.
pounds. Yeah, he was a lean dude. Every line in his body, right? Lines in his glutes, right? Face was sucked in, everything. Looked great, man. I guess and I'll ask you, I'll digress a little bit and ask for your opinion is, man, I thought I had the size. I brought the conditioning, I brought the size, the muscle maturity's there now as I'm in my early 30s. I did everything right. And I'm like, the 19-year-old kid that is 60 pounds lighter, no, it's not 60, but I competed at 169, 168, which is about 6 pounds up from my last year's weight. And it was the best I ever looked. No question, the best package I ever brought to stage. Man, I was proud of him though too. Like I talked to him backstage. Like I'm not shitting on anybody, right? I shook everybody's hands. That's one of the best things about the OCB, and I believe you would agree is the camaraderie backstage, right? I feel like I leave every show. I have 3 new followers on Instagram. I'm talking to promoters, this, that, and the other. So I guess, man, like I don't have the pictures here to show you, and maybe I'll show you, off screen and stuff. But it's like, man, like what did I miss? How did this kid who brought a crazy level of conditioning, I thought I had him beat in the poses. My conditioning might not have been as sharp, but it was sharp. I didn't come up, bloated. I thought I had the size. My posing was on. I guess, without you seeing the pictures or anything, it's like, man, I guess it just solidifies everything we've talked about, right? It's like, dude, size isn't the only thing that matters, especially with the OCB.
Were the other guys that took 1st and 2nd, were they like super leaned out, or did they have the size, or both? Like, what was your opinion on the guys?
The guys who took 1 and 2, I would say were more my physique. They, I think they might have had. I think the guy who took overall got on stage at 174. The guy who took 2nd probably 175, 178. So I think where I lacked in size, right?
Mhm.
1 and 2 made up for, so I can see them, being ahead of me. Um, where I lacked in conditioning, the guy who took third, right, probably had me beat there, but minimal size at best.
Mm.
Not that he doesn't have the opportunity to grow. Like I said, I talked to him. I'm praising this young kid, 19 years old, first show, took third in the open.
Mhm.
And then, the guys who took fourth and fifth, excuse me, the guy who took fifth, sixth, seventh. Yeah, I don't think they do anything after fifth. So the guys
No.
who were
Yeah.
sixth and past that, um, were where they belong. The one guy was in good shape, but just a little washed out, and then the other two guys, probably had about 10 weeks to go.
Mm.
But yeah, I just think that I mean, 1 and 2 justified, 3, I don't know.
Mhm. Because I've heard from other competitors for different organizations that they've been in the area where the judges are at, and I think what the judges do is they kind of look at what the people are. That's what I was kind of getting at, like how 1 and 2 looked, and it's like, okay, are we going to score this based on conditioning for the show, or is it going to be based on size? Are we going to, based on symmetry? Like, how are we basing the judging criteria and everything? Because like the last year, not to make too much about me, but last year when I did my show, um, back in March with you, was that the criteria, it seemed like it was about who's the leanest, who's got the best conditioning. And then when I did this one this past year, it was a different story. It was who is the biggest. And it was what they're really going for and everything. Not necessarily the most conditioned, but the biggest is what they're going for. So unless you're sitting in their seat, it's kind of hard to see from their point of view, like what are we going to look at and judge today. And that's part of the problem, is that when you have people with different weight classes, like all competing in the same thing, it's really hard to really narrow it down. Where it's like, okay, everybody that's in this category is between 140 and 150 pounds. And then this one's like 150 to 160. I know it's not really realistic for OCB compared to NPC that gets a lot more competitors, but like when you have these things that come up, it's like, what are you guys scoring then? Like, what's the scoring where you get a 6'5" guy that weighs 210 pounds versus a 5'2" guy that weighs 120 pounds for the same bodybuilding category or classic physique category? How are you supposed to differentiate between the two? I mean, I'm not the judge or anything like that, but it's like these are little things that probably come into play. It's like, okay, where are we going to score these people on? So that's kind of what I was getting at before, was like, how'd the other two look? Was it just a conditioning thing, or or were they looking for? So it's interesting that the guys above you were heavier than you and had the conditioning and also the size, but the guy that beat you out above you was, just all about conditioning. So it's kind of hard to get in their brains and see what's going on there when they're scoring these things.
Yeah, you ain't kidding. And that was my thought process. I took it's funny, I took fifth in novice,
Mm-hmm.
and then in open I beat the guy who took fourth. So yeah, that's the same look that everybody's giving me. I personally think that I'd like to think maybe it was a mix up, for either way, right? Maybe I could have been fifth, maybe I should have been fourth. I don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I was very shocked to hear my name called first for fifth in novice. And it was literally the same 8 guys, both
Mm-hmm.
in novice and in open. I think with 1 or 2, the young kid who took third in the open, he wasn't in novice with me. He just did teens. But yeah, I mean, I heard my name called at fifth, after literally oozing confidence backstage the whole time, and I was like, fuck. And I saw Lex after, and she's like, she does the typical wife stuff. And she's like, I don't think this, and here's what I saw on this, that, and the other. I mean, she's been around it now, even though she doesn't compete, she's been around it, 12 plus years now. So she knows what I'm looking for. She knows what's best, what my best physique is. She knows for the most part, what to look for. She's like, I really thought you were like top. She's like, I saw them move you to the middle and then not move you from the middle. And I was like, this is, obviously my wife, I'm paraphrasing. And she's like, I was like, holy shit, he's going to do it. And I was like, yeah. So I just felt bad. Like, and I do this every show, man. I don't know if you do the same, but it's like, I walk off stage, disappointed, happy, whatever. I walked off of the stage for novice and I was disappointed, obviously, right? I was like, man, I just don't see it, right? I don't agree. Which a lot of athletes may agree, may not agree. Novice in particular didn't agree with. Open is where, in my opinion, is where it really matters. Novice, debut, teen, all these other categories. It's a nice place to get your feet wet, but open is where that placing, in my opinion, really matters.
Hmm.
You're a great example, right? You do open and you do masters. How many times have you taken 1 out of 1, 2 out of 2, 1 out of 3, right? You don't really have, you're not going up against the best, in my opinion, right? You can correct me if I'm wrong. In the open category, that's where you are standing next to 6, 7, 8 guys. That's where you want to perform your best. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Absolutely right.
So that, in my opinion, is like, all right, novice, I placed where I placed. This is going to give me a good precursor for where I'm going to place in the open. I'm pumped up, right? I'm a little drier. I got some of the water out. I've gone through my poses. I'm confident. I know what to tweak. So I went backstage. I just looked at Lex. I was like, I'm sorry. I was like, I'm so, my son was at the show for the first time. I happened to go on right around nap time. So horrific timing. But I was just like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm sorry you made this trip. I'm sorry I put you through this again. Um, it's just tough, man. Like I get, man, I get emotional when I talk about it because I feel like it's such a sacrifice, and I was so confident going into the show, and I just put my family through it again. Like, how many times is my wife and now my son, my brother who came out to support me, and my mother-in-law and my mother, and you in particular, who I talk to, weekly and stuff like that. It's like, how many times am I gonna fucking put these people through this, man? And
Mm.
then I went out for open. I placed better, right? I beat half the category. That's a good feeling. But how
Mhm.
am I beating the guy that just beat me at literally a half hour ago?
Mm.
How am I not supposed to walk away from the show going, what the fuck was that judging, right? Like, what were they looking at?
Right.
Have you ever been in a situation where, and I don't know if you've ever competed novice, you'd have to, give us a little bit of a backstory. Have
Mm.
you ever had a situation where you placed not poorly, you just didn't place as well in one category, and then maybe in the open or in masters or something, you place relatively higher, or you've even beaten a guy that was beating you in another category in the same show?
I've had I'm trying to think. I've had probably like one or two that were like that, and it's pretty discouraging and everything to like, you go through that, and that's the weird sport about bodybuilding is that there's not like a sport where it's based on like actual scoring for yourself in the sense that like, okay, if you're doing one-on-one basketball, you got to put more, the ball in the hoop more often than the other person does to win the game. Or if it's baseball, you got to hit more runs than the other team does before you get to the ninth inning to win the game. Like it's very subjective. It's like you and me could go into like an art gallery and I might see something that I like. You may see something that you like, and we score differently and say, "Oh, this is great." And then you're like, "No, no, no, this is great. This is actually the better version of it and stuff." And it's such a hard sport to be a part of. And there's a famous saying that like, if you haven't been screwed, you haven't been really a true competitor. And I've always thought that to be so true because you always go to these shows, and if you don't get first, you're always going to be like, "Well, I beat this guy and I beat that guy and all this other stuff." And it's very hard to deal with. And it's something I tell a lot of competitors too. Like, you have to be ready to deal with this. It's going to happen to you at some point. I mean, even the greatest of the greats who competed to become like Mr. Olympia, they've lost shows and everything. Very few of them ever just keep winning and winning and winning. Most of the time, it's like, they come in last in this show, they come in first in this show, they come in 10th in this show, they come in second in this show. So it's such a interesting sport that you kind of have to basically brace yourself. Okay, I might not do as well, and if I do well, then great. That's kind of what my mentality is now going into these things. It's like, all right, I'm going to expect to come in dead last. And if I don't come in dead last, I did a good job. And I hate to say it like that, but that's kind of the way I look at it when I compete.
You're spot on, dude. I mean, and you know what? It's so funny because I must sound like such a hypocrite to so many people that follow me, because I always tell people, and I'm such an advocate for, who cares if you leave there with a plastic trophy?
Mm-hmm.
Are you better than the last time you got on stage?
Right.
So, in my opinion, yes, I was.
You were,
Did you
definitely.
enjoy the process? Yes, I did. Were you having fun while you were up there? Were you hamming it up? Were you hitting your pose? Did you check every box? Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't control who shows up, right? So I kind of got to take my own advice. I was speaking to a woman that actually trains at my local gym, who I had no idea was even competing at the show. And her and I were talking during the check-ins in the morning. She's like, you know what? I agree. I gave her that whole spiel, right? She's like, I agree with you. I don't care about the trophy,
Mm-hmm.
but to compete over and over again and be 5 through 7, she's like, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Because
And
I've
I
seen
said,
many
you know
people
what?
walk away from it, just say, you know what, I'm going to go do something else in my time, or maybe go try a new sport. Maybe I'll go be a power lifter, or maybe I'll go run marathons or something like that. Maybe I'll go do something else. Because what's interesting about the bodybuilding community is I've done enough of the cardio sports, marathons and all that stuff. It's a different type of mentality in those sports where people aren't necessarily looking to win. They just want to compete and say, you know what, I survived this. I did it. And bodybuilding is different because everybody's trying to go in there to win it. And it's so funny because it's like not everybody in this room is going to be able to win this thing. So you got to be able to beat what you did last time. That's kind of the way it is with like competitive running is like, okay, this is my mile time last time. Let's try to beat this. Like let's make sure I'm in the upper part of my category when I'm competing and everything and go from there. So it's a very interesting sport. And I have to remind people that it's like, it's different. You're not always going to win when you think you're going to win. So my mentality, like I said, like I just mentioned before, is okay, I'm probably going to come in last. If I don't get last, then you know what? I did a good job.
It's funny you say that because I completely agree. I think as long as I don't, so when I was competing in NPC, I was fourth out of fourth every single time. I have a plethora of trophies in my basement that say fourth place.
Hmm.
And I kind of, again, to play devil's advocate and maybe to contradict myself, I do think she had a point though, Todd. I do think like I've gotten on stage, I don't, let's say 7 times, right? I don't have the number off the top of my head. I'd have to count. Um, Man, how many times am I going to be? Am I just a fourth place bodybuilder? A guy reached out to me. I don't mean to say a guy, girl, whoever it was. Somebody who's followed me along, who's one of my followers, DM'd me, responded to one of my Instagram stories and one of my check-ins. And I don't know if they were just trying to be funny or just kind of lighten the mood, but they said, um, "You still bodybuild? How long?" Or yeah, you still. I'm paraphrasing. Hey, you still do this bodybuilding? I said, yeah, I absolutely love it. I don't know when I'll stop. It's like, man, how long are you going to do this if you're just a fourth place bodybuilder? And I was like,
Hmm.
man, it's a bit of a shot to the gut, right? It's like,
Hmm.
so not only do I see it, but now other people are seeing it. It's like, man, every
Hmm.
time you get up there, you're going to take fourth. You're just going to keep doing it. I can't control who 1 through 3 is.
Right.
I can't control what the judges are looking for that day. But I tell you what, to your point, I'm not last, right?
Right.
That's a win, right? I get up there, I put in the work. I put in more work than these guys. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I did better on show day than these guys. Do I need the trophy? No. Does it make me feel a little better walking away with something? Yeah. But I don't have to be first.
Hmm.
I refuse to be last.
Right. I like that. That's an
Um,
excellent.
yeah, I don't have to be first. I refuse to be last. I think if I started getting up on stage, and I think you would agree, let's say you do, right, you're somebody who does 1, 2, maybe 3 shows. I'm somebody who always says I'm gonna, but I do 1 show and I pack it in. I think if you do 2 or 3 shows in a row and you're 6 out of 6, 8 out of 8, whatever the case may be, out of a group, right? Let's use the open specifically because I know with novice might be a shorter group. Division masters is always relatively smaller.
Mhm.
I think that's when you pack it in. I think
Mhm.
if you have a bad year, and I don't mean you didn't put in the work or life got in the way, like you got on stage and you placed poorly time and time again. You're right. It's time to change it up. But if you are taking that if I'm, I'll use me as an example. I don't want to use anybody else. I'm taking
Mhm.
fourth place in the open. I'm on the right track. I don't think I'm
Right.
done. I'm 31 years old.
Mhm.
Who's to say that I don't have 10 more years of this left in me? I don't know if I do. A couple more years, I'll be on that master stage. But yeah, I mean, you make a great point. It's like, if you're as long as you're not last, you should be happy with where you're at.
Right. Yeah, I've been at marathon, like at least for marathons, like people are like come in at like 110th place or whatever, be happy with that because they didn't come in dead last, and it's like what, I did it. I survived this whole thing.
And
So
you nail on the head. It's like there are professional bodybuilders that
mhm.
never win.
Yeah, I mean
Never.
the big and there's guys that like become pros that like never win the Olympia overall. I mean, there's a whole plethora of famous bodybuilders that that never make it. to become Mr. Olympia. I mean, you could think through all the years, like guys like Lee Priest has never won. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's never won the Olympia, right?
Totally.
Yeah, Lee Priest. I don't think he's ever coming first for that. Um, there's other guys like what's his name? Tom Platz, some of the greatest legs in the history of bodybuilding. He's never, come in first place. He became a pro, but once he became a pro, he never won it. Lou Ferrigno. There's a whole list of people
Yep.
that do become, and they never win that category. So it's a sport where most of the time you're probably not going to become the top dog. There's very few that like just are always number one. Like those very few are like the Arnolds, the the Lee Haneys, the Dorian Yates, and I mean even those guys have expiration dates and when they're going to go out. Ronnie Coleman, all those guys. So it's like very few that are considered one.
When's your expiration date? What's next for Todd?
Right now I'm in off season mode. My last show, I kind of like in the same ballpark as you, where it was like I thought I should have placed higher, and you see things backstage, and it's like, does this seem like legit to me, or is this some politicking going on around here? And other people say, "Oh no, there's no politicking going on." And I'm like, in a sport where there's judging, there's always going to be politics. I mean, how many times have you seen in professional boxing where, like, if the guy didn't get knocked out, it went to the score, and the score was like way off than what the audience and everyone else was expecting it to be. So when you take a few of those over time, you start to sit there and question everything. It's like, do I really want to keep put myself through this? So right now, I just need to step away, clear my head, put some size on, and then kind of go from there and reassess what I want to do. Because you and me, we're not teenagers anymore. We got responsibilities. I mean, you have your wife and your son, your work and everything like that. All those things take precedence. That's what really more so matters in life. I mean, the trophy is not going to give you $10 million if you win it. So I got to do what I got to do to make a living and keep a roof over my head and keep my family going well. So right now I'm just kind of in a mode where it's like it's kind of adding me the bug. I just kind of need to just step away and see if it comes back in and reignites the fire. I mean, I want to do it because, as you know, it's a big commitment when you say I'm going to do a show. I mean, all your family, your friends, and all that stuff, all the fun times you have, that's all going to get put on pause mode so you can go do this one thing and then step back out of it again and become semi normal again.
Are you chasing a brass ring? Do you see yourself taking number one overall in maybe just a division, right? You don't have to win the whole show, but you place first. You pack it in?
I mean, I have firsts, and I mean, I haven't packed it in yet. But for me, I think if I was to become if I did a show and I became OCB pro off that show and that was it, I could see myself walking away and saying, you know what, I don't really want to keep continuing this. Now some people do. Some people want to keep continuing as a pro and all that stuff. But for me to get that, it's like, okay, I climbed the mountain, I'm good. I mean, to really stay to that level where I'm doing, pro shows, that's an even greater commitment on my part, as you know, like you got to dial in to do one of these shows, but to do those shows, I mean, you're going against people who've won their shows in other states and other places that you're competing against now. And it's like the competition is that much harder, which means that you got to bring in like the best of the best every single time, which means you got to be even more strict in your off season mode and even more strict when you're going to prep mode, because if you don't, you'll be blown off the stage before you even know what happened to you on your next quarter turn.
That's a great way to put it, dude. I would say I'm in the same boat. I win I win my open class overall, and then whatever, maybe overall I take third, right? Whatever. But I win my division, I pack it in. I become an OCB pro, I pack it in. I'll make it less granular. I'll make it super specific. I win my OCB pro card, I'm done.
Mm.
I would be done. I guess so. You kind of confirmed, right? Rest of the year you're taking off. Life take precedent. I agree. No shows for 2025 as of now. Every couple months, I'll continue to try to change your mind. Look, I'm
think we were talking before about like shows. I mean, I mentioned it before in some of our other podcasts, and I was talking loosely, is that maybe we just need to go to a different region of the country to compete, because maybe just seeing this, because it's like it's not like the NPC where they have like a plethora of like judges and you could get different judges every single time. You're pretty much getting, no matter what region you're in, the same people to judge you again and again. So maybe
Wow.
it might help to have someone else with a new set of eyeballs take a look at you and say, you know what, maybe you should be higher up than what this other state's been saying that you're at. Maybe you really are a lot better than what this other region's been saying you're at. And we actually value you here. And we do think that you're worthy of this position.
I love that. I mean, so I have family in Florida. I have family in Delaware, so it's close to Baltimore. The Conqueror, I have a great relationship with Frank and his wife, who run the Conqueror in Maryland, and I've been telling him that I'm going to compete at that show every couple of years, and family in Florida, and I have friends and ambassadors and athletes with BMI Sports up in Massachusetts. These are all areas that I'm leaning towards competing in next year. Looking at the opportunity, I mean, listen, Allentown isn't close, right? But you're still, to your point, that's a Franco promotion. So, you got to look at the Virginias, the Massachusetts, even Connecticut is probably the closest, Connecticut and Maryland, where you're going to get a new panel of judges.
I think if you were to go to some of these other regions and like you have this region, the New Jersey, Pennsylvania region, but I think if you were to jump into other regions and have different, if all these other judges, no matter where you go, like let's say you go to Florida and do a show there, or you go to Maryland, do a show there, if they're all saying the same thing as the PA and the NJ judges, then maybe it's like, maybe I need to reassess this whole thing. All these other judges.
Maybe this is it, right? I think you're absolutely right. If those judges, let's say I go and I compete and it's a larger class, whatever the case may be, it's a new line of judges, new competitors, and I take fourth again. Okay, I'm a fourth place bodybuilder. That's what it is. I can swallow that pill. But if I've had 3 judging panels, actually technically 2 judging panels in the last 5 years tell me I'm a fourth place bodybuilder, I kind of need somebody else's opinion. I need that second set of eyes, so to speak. Now, granted, I don't know if we compete enough or we get on stage or we, get in front of these people enough. Maybe it's the coaches we use or don't use. Maybe it's the supplements we promote or don't promote. That, to your point, politics does play a role in that. Maybe if you use one of the promoters as your coach, maybe you'll place better, right? But unfortunately for us, we have our integrity is still intact. So we're not going to do that. We're going to put ourselves in the best situation for us to win and compete and check those boxes. You're packing it in, having a structured off season. I'm doing the same. I'm about 6 weeks, post show, and as much as I'd like to see the scale get up to that 200 number, man, I'm loving 186. I feel good. I still have abs. I check in every Friday. I love the meals that I'm on. It's basically the exact same meals I was doing when I was dieting, just a little bit more of. I have no complaints. Cardio still intact, man. Like, I think I know I can speak for you, and I'll speak for myself when I say we're having good off seasons. So we're not in a rush. We're both living our lives, work, family, all that stuff. So, yeah, man, listen, I think this is a great place to end. I think we're both in a good place from a mental standpoint coming out of both of our shows. We may not be thrilled with the results, but I think we did our, it sounds so corny. We did our best. And we're happy with that. We can sleep at night. And I think the one largest takeaway from this episode is we're not done, right? We're still, the mountaintop is still there to your analogy. We're still, I'll speak for myself. I'm still reaching for that brass ring. I think if I can say, Ryan Fitzgerald, OCB Classic Pro, I can be done. I can pack it in. I guess the same for you, what you just said. But yeah, dude, any final thoughts? Anything to say before we wrap it up?
It's tough. It's tough. It's not an easy sport. It has you questioning a lot of things, and makes you also put things in perspective, like what's important, what's not important in your life, and all that. And I think at the end of the day, as long as you stay consistent with your health, sometimes I post, and if you see me in the past, post my blood pressure numbers. Things like your health markers are probably the most important thing out there. Like a trophy's, it's cool, and becoming a pro would be awesome. But as long as I'm in good health and you're in good health, I think at the end of the day, that's probably the most important thing to our family and our friends, is that we're in the tip top shape and we're going to be on this earth for a while. That's probably the most important thing to walk away with for me in a lot of cases, or setting personal bests for yourself and achieving them in the fitness world too. Is on top of that is always something you can hold your hat to. There's always times where I look at people and then I'm like, I know you can't do what I do on the Stairmaster. I know you can't, lift all the weights that I do at my size, whatever. I know you can't do it. So it's always nice to have that in the back of your head. So you got to put things in perspective and stuff, and like, weigh with the goods, with the bads. At the end of the day, we both got good careers and good families and everything like that. So how many people would probably trade their pro card in for something like that? I'm sure there's a few people that would.
Great spot, dude. We're about to get kicked off this call because we're out of time. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And as always, thank you, everybody, for stopping by the Framework.
Take care.